Today, we're diving into the incredibly complex life of Brigitte Bardot. With her recent passing at 91, everyone's talking about her legacy, and for good reason. She was a global superstar, a trailblazing activist, and, well, a deeply controversial figure. We're going to unpack why her story is so much more than meets the eye. First off, you have to understand just how huge she was. This wasn't your typical movie star fame. We're talking about a level of celebrity where the president of France, Charles de Gaulle himself, saw her as a national treasure, right up there with the country's biggest industrial giants. So, in the first part of her life, Bardot was more than just an actress. She was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Dubbed the sex kitten, she represented this brand new, unapologetic kind of freedom that completely blew up the conservative rules of the post-war world. And her rise? It was absolutely meteoric. I mean, look at this. She goes from a teenage model to a global superstar in just 4 years. By 1959, you have the famous feminist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir calling her a locomotive of women's history. And a decade later, she literally becomes the face of the French Republic. Her breakout film and God-created woman was a total bombshell. Now, $4 million might not sound like a ton today, but for a foreign film in 1957, that was an insane amount of money. The movie was so scandalous in the US that some theater managers actually got arrested just for showing it. That's the kind of power she had to shake things up. And then, at the absolute peak of her fame, a level of stardom most people can't even dream of, she did something that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. It was a choice that would completely split her life and her legacy in two. After starring in nearly 50 films and pretty much defining an entire era of cinema, she just walked away from it all. At only 39 years old, think about that, an age when most actors are hitting their prime, she said, "I'm done." And when people asked her why, this was her simple answer. But let me tell you, this was so much more than an elegant exit. This was the starting gun for two completely new and deeply conflicting chapters of her life. So, the first new direction she took? She became a pioneering and, frankly, militant activist for animal rights. This wasn't just some casual hobby. It would become her absolute obsession for the rest of her life. And she went all in. We're not talking about just lending her name to a cause. She auctioned off her own personal belongings, her jewelry, everything, to raise millions to start her foundation. She became a vegetarian and physically went to the Canadian ice floes to protest the killing of baby seals, putting herself on the front lines. And this wasn't just a phase. Her passion for animals was lifelong. Right up until she died, one of the last things her foundation posted online was a plea to find a home for a rescue dog. It really shows you that for the last 50 years of her life, this was her mission. Okay, but that's just one side of the story, because there was a second, much darker path she went down in her later years. This path took her deep into the world of far-right politics and led to multiple criminal convictions and a whole lot of public anger. Her politics took a sharp, hard right turn. She married an advisor to the extremist leader Jean-Marie Le Pen and later endorsed his daughter Marine Le Pen for president. She also went on the attack against modern social movements, calling actresses in the #MeToo movement hypocrites and saying that unwanted comments about her body were charming. And this right here, this table, shows a really disturbing pattern. She was convicted for inciting racial hatred 6 different times. And you can see how her comments just get more and more extreme over the years, escalating from anti-immigrant rhetoric to calling the people of Réunion savages. This kind of unfiltered cruelty wasn't just public either. It was deeply personal. In her own memoir, she wrote about her only son, Nicolas Jacques Charrier, in a way that's just hard to even wrap your head around. The things she said were so hurtful that both her son and her ex-husband, Jacques Charrier, successfully sued her. So, what do we do with all that? How do you reconcile these two completely different people inside one life? Is she a saint for what she did for animals, or a sinner for her hateful words? An icon of freedom, or a political outcast? It really is this shocking duality. On one side, you have the trailblazer, a global sex symbol, a fashion muse, a hero to animals. And on the other side, you have the outcast, convicted for racism, a supporter of the far right, a critic of modern feminism, and a mother who is estranged from her only child. You know, a legacy is really just the story that people tell about you after you're gone. And it's almost never simple. Bardot's life is just a powerful, almost jarring example of how a person's story can be filled with these deep, uncomfortable, and seemingly impossible contradictions.
So that's the crucial question, isn't it? When a public figure is all of these things at once, an icon, an activist, and a bigot, what's the story that lasts? How do we remember a legacy like this? Is it even possible to celebrate the good parts while condemning the horrible ones? That's the complex puzzle Brigitte Bardot's life forces us to confront. Thanks for joining this explainer.